Tokyo Game Show this past September was a big coming out party for the PlayStation 3 in Japan. However, a little game from Konami for the Wii called Elebits ended up taking the award for Best of Show. We were puzzled, perplexed, and more than a little surprised. All the gorgeous games on the floor, and a seemingly simple title featuring a bunch of electrified rodents wiped the floor with them. Now that we've had a chance to play it for ourselves, we're beginning to understand why. We've heard of kids hating Brussels sprouts, brushing their teeth, or going to bed. But electricity? What good-natured child would hate electricity? How could they play video games? Well, that's exactly the setup behind Elebits. A child wishes that all the electricity in the world would go away, and as luck would have it, all the planet's juice is supplied by the tiny Elebit creatures. They go into hiding, and the child, realizing that it was a mistake, sets off to capture the Elebits and restore the power. Far-fetched? Yep. Ridiculous? Yes on that one too. Making matters worse, the story is told through a collection of hand-drawn art and some god-awful voice acting.
Electricity and cars only work because of Elebits, you know. You wouldn't even be able to watch TV without them.
It's just an excuse to set up the gameplay, but far too many launch games this season have been taking this easy way out. Elebits is no exception. So how does a kid go about zapping small, electrified creatures to recapture the world's power? Well, apparently there are guns for that, and this kid's got one. Elebits plays from a first-person perspective. You never see the gun, and there are so many lapses of logic that you have to institute a healthy suspension of disbelief to get into it. For all intents and purposes, Elebits is a puzzle game. You begin each scenario in a particular area, and it's your job to figure out how to access new parts of the territory to collect as many Elebits as possible. As you collect the critters, a wattage meter will grow, and each area has an overall wattage target that you have to hit to complete it. Additionally, each area is littered with electronics that require a certain level of wattage to activate. Once they spring to life, they'll spill out a different kind of Elebit that increases the power of your gun, allowing you to move heavier items and find even more Elebits. This cycle repeats over and over throughout the game, though it's never really explained why you need a certain amount of power just to open a door to a new room. A variety of X factors are eventually tossed in to mix things up and keep them interesting. There are tons of different power-ups to help you find the Elebits. Some bait them so that they come out of hiding, some paralyze the varmints, others provide gun upgrades like a lock-on feature, and there are other tools like a radar that helps you track them down. There are several different types of Elebits, and each one accounts for a different number of watts. Some just lie there waiting to be zapped. Others will teleport or take to the air, making it a little more difficult to get them, but the rewards always justify the effort. The single-player option is surprisingly robust, with dozens of areas to complete. The difficulty ramps up perfectly for an adult, but kids will probably start having issues about 10 missions in, as you'll have to manage over 10 different electronics, several doors, and hundreds of Elebits, all under a strict time limit. Eventually, they'll also start giving you a quota of breakable objects. Break too many, and you'll have to start all over again. Aside from the single-player campaign, there's a wealth of other options to take part in with up to 4 players. This semi-cooperative multiplayer option has one player controlling movement while all the players zap away at the environment. There's a good bit of strategy involved here, as the player controlling movement can effectively lock out the other players once a lead has been established. There's also online functionality where you can build your own levels using templates and then send them to friends via WeConnect 24. One part of Elebits that falls well short is the graphics. Compared to games on the PS3 and Xbox 360, it can look downright prehistoric. This is remedied a bit by being able to interact with every last shoe, box, and dish, but the simple visuals will certainly turn off graphics tarts. Elebits is a surprisingly big game that has lots of features you wouldn't expect. In addition to the meaty single-player mode, it's also the first Wii game to have any sort of online functionality. Toss in a fun, but limited multiplayer option, and you have one of the larger games available for the system. Playing Elebits is all about physics. Granted, the physics engine makes the objects in the game entirely too floaty, but it's just fun to grab stuff, give it a toss, and watch how it interacts with the rest of the environment. As your gun increases with power, you'll be able to pick up bigger objects, which is when things really start to get fun. One caveat is that you have to break the power-ups before using them, which can be difficult to do as they tend to gently bounce around. The game controls just like a first-person shooter. You aim with the Wii Remote, press the A or B button to fire, and move with strafe with the analog stick on the nunchuck. You can also duck to see under objects to hunt down some of the more elusive elements. You'll pick it up in no time, but there are some issues that will have you fighting the urge to give your controller a toss in the later missions. There are many doors you'll have to open throughout the game, and they all appear to be spring-loaded. You'll open them, and then they'll immediately try to close again. The only remedy is to be extremely delicate while opening them, but with the always changing power of the gun, it can be difficult to gauge. There's no hit detection on a lot of the doors, so you can't really jam your body in there to keep them open. In fact, the hit detection overall is suspect. A lot of the objects in the game will block your shots when they shouldn't. Also, the gesture for turning doorknobs can be a little hard to get the hang of, and overall there's a lot of things that should be tightened up for a sequel. While the targeting with the Wii Remote is dead on, turning around can take a long time, and just like a lot of the other Wii games, once the cursor goes off the screen, there's no telling what's going to happen. But after you've played the game for a couple of hours, you'll start to learn the ins and outs, and you'll realize that Elebits, regardless of his shortcomings, is one fun game to play. So many of the Wii launch games basically have the remote functionality tacked on at the last minute to make a buck. Elebits is not one of them. It's not a particularly attractive game, and there are some gameplay quirks to work around, but it's easy to forget the issues when you're making a total mess of things, tossing objects from one side of the room to the other and letting gravity take its course.